Okay, good afternoon and welcome everybody. Firstly, we'd like to say thank you for being patient with us. We are aware that the program is running a bit behind, but without wasting any more time, on behalf of Krishet and Mandela SRC, I would like to welcome you. I will be introducing today's speaker. So today's speaker is Dr. Pedro Muzzelini, right? Hi, and then someone else will do a nice formal introduction of our author. Okay, thank you and enjoy.
Thank you very much, Krishet, for the warm welcome. Oluyen comrades. Minjani? No on the appeal. As introduced, my name is Pedro, and I'm a research associate in the Faculty of Humanities at Nelson Mandela. For those of you who know the hierarchy of higher education, how it works. When you are a research associate, it means you are just attached to the university for your intellectual property. Otherwise, you're not based here full time. So I come here once a semester just to use my mind once in a while, and then go back to where I am and take my mind off. Where I am, I'm currently the manager in the office of the Deputy Executive Mayor in Buffalo City Municipality in East London. But I see so many familiar faces because previously, before I left, I was a lecturer in the Department of Sociology and Anthropology. So I do see a few people that I used to teach before. So it's good to see you all once again. It's my first time speaking on a podium of a university, of Nelson Mandela University, since October 2019. That's the last time I spoke in a physical venue in this university. Now it's my first time since then. It's also my first time coming here this year. I left last year, December. So it feels good to be here, and I see that there are so many developments that have happened since the last time we met. I now hear that because previously when I was here, the campus had a president of SASCO. The campus had a national president. The campus also had a national president of SAUS. Now I hear that we have added to that reservoir of student leadership. We now have a deputy president of the EFF Student Command, elected, I think, last month, Comrade Mzukisi. So congratulations to him. Let's give him a round of applause. So, Nelson Mandela University remains a reservoir and an inventory of student leadership in the whole country. In fact, all products from the student movement and SRC in this university, they are all doing amazing things wherever they are. Even those when up here who only managed to make it as far as Housecom. They went on also to become useful citizens in life. Housecom is a very strategic position. You know, when we used to talk leadership in the SRC, especially this time when SASCO was being moored on many occasions on the ballot. So we find that we only allocated 6 seats, or even 4. Yet the line is too long, you know. We have about 25 comrades that we're campaigning with. Now you think, how are we going to fit 25 comrades in 4 seats? So you convince comrades that, no, you see, being prim is very strategic. You know, you must stay there so that you develop as time goes. Then you are ready to take over next time. So yeah, we acknowledge those comrades as well. So this is an institution of student leadership with so many credentials in the student movement. That is why all of you comrades, you must fight, therefore, for the return of staff and students to campus. All of them. Because you won't be able to be a well-manufactured leader of young people through leading online. It's impossible. I mean, how do you talk racism online? How do you address gender-based violence on Zoom? It's impossible. So that thing of webinars and online lectures, it must come to an end, because that is not how you get trained as a student leader. You need a physical environment like this one, where we're able to contest each other's views, and you feel the emotions of the room, Comrade Mluat, because that is how you will begin to learn and unlearn when you're in a physical environment. And another limitation with staff members that are online, and you must write this down so that you make it as a fact to the VC. We have a university now that is running in people's individual laptops. Now tell me, if that person who has been running the university on their laptop since 2020 until now, if they resign tomorrow, how is that skill going to be transferred to the next person? It means they live with the university. You get me? So it is important to return everyone so that there is that exchange of views among students and staff once again, because that is how leadership gets produced. We also meet in the medical school. We have a medical school, this campus is in a township, and we have built a medical school here so that it serves the working class. What value then of science if it is not going to address the needs of the poor and the working class in a township? That's the purpose of education. It must change those conditions. And we want SASCO, the EFF, Student Command, the SRC, not to disengage from the battle to have this medical school named after Professor Lungile Pepeta. We must continue pushing that until it happens, because the naming policy, it's clear of how you name buildings and the process that must be followed. Professor Pepeta was not an ordinary professor of medicine in this university. You know, he was a doctor of our people, the Che Guevara of our times, you know. So you ought to name a medical school after such a revolutionary who served the Eastern Cape region throughout his life. So continue with that mission to have the medical school renamed after him. I mean, you've renamed your residences in South Campus already. So don't stop renaming buildings, because buildings are part of the identity of the institution. So you can't be walking to building 35. What is political about 35? Property of an institution of higher learning must be renamed after the people whom we share an ideological campus with as students. That is the essence of a university. But we're not there. Let me welcome the author of these 2 voluminous books, a friend of mine, over a period of time. Molaudi was Sekake. This is a great achievement, my brother. You know, I was still reading your first book. I was still in the middle, titled Meditations from the Gutter. And I heard on the SAPC that, no, he has published another one. Hey, man, this leader. Meaning he's always on a line of duty. He understands that without minds that are sharpened, we are going to go to society and keep on repeating the very same mistakes that put black people where they are now. Because everything that you do, everything that you say and do in society, it's an expression of a particular paradigm of how you think. You see? So everything is a product of ideas. It's a product of ideas. So the word written down is so important in shaping the content of the revolution. So Molaudi is one of the leaders I respect so much in the youth movement, because he is one of the few who has fully imbibed the essence of using theory and practice to articulate the art of struggle. He understood that assignment very well. Very few gay comrades understand that assignment, because there are people who think pure that they can lead a revolution without going to school. It's impossible. There's no revolutionary that didn't go through the labor of receiving theory. You've got to be disciplined to learn, receive qualifications, and then translate that knowledge into making an impact in the society where you come from. Then you are a revolutionary. Are we together? So the invite that I received was to come here and be a moderator of this book launch. The title of the book is clear: Socialism, Nomunt, Omusha, taking the oath of revolution. It has 2 volumes, volume 1 and volume 2. I've purchased the copies of this book. I'm still waiting for my delivery. That I hope will come, but I have been going through a PDF in the meantime. So that is the essence of why we are here. With these fields, I want to welcome all of you into this room. Hopefully that we will have a very robust session of interacting with the pressing challenges facing students and young people in society, but most importantly about the state of the nation and the world that we exist under. Because there is no Chinese wall between the past, the present, and the future. Those things are interconnected. It's not a mistake that students who are indebted in 2022 are black students. It's a product of the past. So people will say to you in class that 1994 happened a long time ago, forget about it, or 1960 happened a long time ago, forget about it. Those people are mad, very stupid. Because you can't separate the past from the present. In fact, the future that we're heading to is going to be shaped by the current class conditions of today and those of the past. So it's also the same way with the whole world, how it works. Don't think that the fuel price is not going to affect you as a student. In fact, the fuel price even determines the content of the curriculum you're learning in the classroom. We will explain those concepts during the session as we go. So what happens in the world, what happens in the country, what happens in the classroom, there's no Chinese wall between these things. They are all interconnected. They affect you on a daily basis. They even inform your romantic decisions. You know? Families and relationships have changed in the past 10 years because of the superstructure of the economy and how it is affecting those relations in these days. So nothing in society is disconnected from you as a student. In fact, major revolutions that were led in the past, if you trace the history of those revolutionaries, they were all great and they all cut their teeth when they were students. If you trace Mandela's life, his apex came when he was a student. If you trace Biko's life, his apex was when he was a student. You trace Winnie's life, Che Guevara's life, Fidel's life, all of them, they were at their peak when they were students. If you read history horizontally. No, I've read Fanon. Fanon once says, each generation. Once go to Fanon, each generation, you must know, this one didn't read Fanon. The most powerful weapon in the hands of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. So this one didn't read Biko. He's taking those Googled quotes that always appear first. So you didn't do the labor of studying. That is why your decisions are going to be misinformed. So, welcome to this session. It's very important for your development because most of the things I learned throughout my studies were things that I did not receive from my lecturers. Are things I learned from my own effort, from my own development outside the classroom. So in a protest environment, in a BGM, in a public lecture like this one, that is where I used to learn the most. Talking with people, with our people in the township, reading my own books at my own time, at my own choice and selection. That's what sharpened my development, not the classroom. So when you are outside the classroom, that is when you must be awake because it is where you're going to receive true education. Because now here we're not preparing you for an examination, right? We're now preparing your mind so that it can be emancipated to change society. You know, when you study for an exam, this education system we have, Masulwando crams the whole semester. Chief, cram the whole semester for a 3-hour exam that is on the 3rd of June. So after you've crammed everything, you go to that exam, you write for those 3 hours. I'm telling you now, 2 days, 3 days after the exam, you've forgotten everything that you've crammed. And we think that that education system is something we need to change society. That's not the education system that will change society. That's an education system for you to go and write an exam for 2 hours and be a robot up until the end. So there's a high possibility, that under the current system of education, we are capping people who say you have an honors degree in economics, yet they know nothing about the economy. Because they were being educated for exams. They were being educated for 3-hour papers. Even this thing of online that no, you must write essays, they copy those essays, plagiarize, so that I pass, I get my DP, go to the next level. That system is not going to assist black people. We need a different model that is far bigger. So let me welcome you, and I've been saying welcome now for the 3rd time. Welcome now, for real. I hope we will have a very interactive session with the author. We are going to give him time to take us through the concepts and this route of an alternative life that we could imagine for ourselves as young people. I'm not sure, President, where we are in the program, whether to invite the SG. Yes, the Secretary General of the SRC. I would like to invite her forward, Comrade Mpanza, to come and introduce the keynote speaker and the author of the book. Over to you, Mpanza, SG.
Sanmunan Kamalamusnetezagile and I serve as the Secretary General of the SLC. Just as a correction, Dr. Pedro, I'm just here to welcome you guys on behalf of the SLC. I'm not introducing the speaker. And on behalf of Madibo's SLC, we would like to welcome you to this book launch. We feel that it is very important that we create the spaces where we come together and engage and teach each other how to critically think about issues that affect us in our society. So I think it's something like that. So just feel at home. Feel free to engage. The gentleman's restroom is on this side, and the female's restroom is on the other side. If you need something to drink, please just give us a few minutes of your patience. I will distribute water when it has arrived. Otherwise, feel free and welcome. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, SG. Let's move with the program quickly without wasting time. I think the person who's going to introduce the author is Ntlaki. Yes, Ntlaki. Please come forward and introduce the keynote speaker.
Okay, I'm back. So I'm here to introduce our main speaker today. Mr. Mulawudi Waseka. Not me butchering your surname, I'm so sorry. It's not like I didn't spend the whole morning with you. Okay, so I'm here to introduce the main speaker of today, Mr. Mulawudi Wakakane, who is Sikake. See, now we all learned it together, Sikake. Who is the author of the book Under Discourse, Socialism, Nomunt, Omusha. Omulawudi is an activism scholar and writer. He is the author not only of the 2 volumes that we will be discussing today, but as well as the Meditation from the Gutter. Some of the copies are available today for sale. They are 700 for both. As you can see, they're very big, and I'm pretty sure that he's going to tell us all about what's in them. So I hope you guys are ready to participate and engage in our discourse today. Thank you. Please welcome our speaker.
Before the speaker is introduced a million times. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me allay your fears. The reason why I am wearing a mask, I was a bit under the weather for the past 2 weeks or so. And then when Boponso were putting pressure that, hey man, the program is on, I had to make sure that under the weather as I was, I go see a doctor to see whether anything tragic is happening or not. Did some checkups, and then the guy said, no, there's nothing tragic. You just need to drink a lot of water. So just to allay your anxiety, just to allay your fears, I'm okay. It's just a bit of a cold that will come from time to time, but I'm hopeful that it's never going to disturb our program. So I think I have achieved allaying your fears. The other thing I want to do is to appreciate and to acknowledge the SRC and the stakeholders who are part of organizing this event. I want to say this because it's very rare, especially in our institutions, for people who embody the ideas we embody to be invited in such spaces. We are given a lot of liberal gibberish that we swallow from time to time, published by the so-called Jonathan publishers, Pedro, that we are always offered. So I just want to appreciate the moment and to profusely say I am very grateful to be here. I am not going to take long because we have to mind time and engagements. I think for the purposes of recording, I'm going to stand here, but I don't normally like, presenting like this because it's very mechanical, but I will try. I will start by narrating a story. And the story is the foundation of the text. And the purpose of narrating the story is to make the session a bit unconventional, in a sense, so that it's a bit interactive, so that it's a bit participatory. You don't have a preacher standing before you, dishing out the ultimate wisdom of the century. No. I was told a story at some point that there is a person called Chairman Mao. Have we ever heard of a person called Chairman Mao? Yeah, comrade? Yes. So, apparently, one day Chairman Mao narrated a story to the Chinese youth. And the story went like this. There was a long-standing tradition in China that each and every year, everyone in the community must undertake what in religious terms is called a pilgrimage, like an annual process of leaving your communities to a holy land. I'm sure we are familiar with that process. But a long-standing tradition was that when we do this process and go up the mountain, everyone must take themselves up the mountain. That is the golden rule. So if we leave our communities, our villages, and we have to go up the mountain as our holy space for healing, for spiritual renewal, everybody must take themselves up the mountain. Chairman Mao then says there was this father who had a sick daughter. The belief was that if you take yourself up the mountain, you will be healed. If you take yourself up the mountain, you will be healed. All your problems will come to an end. Now there was this father who had a very sick daughter. And the daughter could only take herself halfway the mountain. And when the daughter could only take herself halfway the mountain, the entire community stopped and wanted to see what was going to be the reaction of the father. So the daughter lost the energy. She could not, garner the strength to take herself up the mountain. If you were the father, or even the mother for that matter, who had a very sick daughter, who could not take herself up the mountain, what were you going to do? Remember, there is a long-standing tradition which has been practiced for centuries, century after century after century, that you must take yourself up the mountain. No one must help you out. What were you going to do if you were the father or the mother of a sick daughter? Any hands? In fact, there is no need for hands. I think you can speak as long as you don't speak while someone is talking. A long-standing tradition, everybody must take themselves up the mountain, no one must be assisted. You have a sick daughter, as a mother, as a father. Halfway up the mountain, fatigue sets in, exhaustion sets in. You are the father, you are the mother, you are standing like, you are closer to whoever is your daughter or son, whatever the case. What were you going to do if you were that, father? There was a voice this side. Okay. So you are operating under the assumption that she will garner strength. That's the underlying assumption you have. That's it. Okay. Anyone else? Eh? How dare you? There is a long. I'm not. By the way, don't be intimidated by my response because you may be correct. There is a long-standing. There is a golden rule. You know, when something is said to be golden, it's so sacred, it's so sacrosanct. So when you are saying you would carry her up the mountain and violate the belief that has been practiced for centuries. Yes, yes. Any view? Yeah.
Testing. Thank you. You say the good luck only comes if they're not assisted, yeah? So how about I don't help them, I motivate them as the dead. I go there, I relax with her, we gather our strength, we take 2-3 more steps, we relax till we make, because I'm assuming once I hold her and help her up the stairs, the luck is gone.
So you become a Vustembegwayo.
Come again?
So you become a Vustembegwayo.
I become a visitor to my daughter. I mean, I'm here.
I see. So there's an element of motivation, a very interesting dimension. You motivate. Not sure how far you can go in motivating an exhausted soul. Any other view?
No.
Yeah? Okay.
The reality with rules, norms, and cultures is generally that they change over time, and it's important to question them because it may be that it's outdated, it's not relevant to the particular society, or it may be based on some view that is no longer consistent with how things are going within that specific context.
Okay.
So I would take the daughter because, I mean, I would want to save my daughter, and if, you know,
Okay.
it's a gamble, it's one that I'm willing to take.
Okay. Last few hands, yeah?
No, I think I'll be adding to the same thing. I'll take my daughter. I'd violate the norm. I would violate it and face whatever will come. But I would take my daughter.
You damn the tradition.
No, damn it.
The last, yes, and then you follow.
Thank you very much. I just want to add in the last two speakers, just because it's more of breaking the chains.
Okay.
Just because you get that the community there is hold up on something that's no longer working for that community anymore. You get that people are very sick, and this particular example is that daughter can't really go up anymore. So the only option is for that daughter to be picked up going to the mountain.
Okay.
But still, she will eventually get there and get healed.
Okay.
Yeah. So they can't really get the spiritual thing that from the mountain to her. So the only option is for her to be taken to the mountain.
Okay,
Thank you.
I see. Okay. The last.
Okay. I think we should, I would look at in a manner of before what had happened.
Okay.
As in, Masiti Mhlambe, there was another daughter before mine. There was another person that needed to go up that mountain. So you look at it in that manner, first of all, what had happened? And then how did they overcome that? Did they change the norms, or they decided maybe to die on their way to the mountain, up the mountain?
I see tigers, intention.
Okay. But then, if we
there is no historical reference.
There's no, okay. Then I agree with everyone that says change the norms.
Okay.
So everything is meant to be changed in society. That's how we develop everything else.
Oh, okay. Okay. Ngicela ungiboleke yona le mic. This thing is constraining because I want to finish it up. Thank you very much. I think the reason for me being here, it's null and void. Because you have already done what I was supposed to do in explaining the essence of the book. Pedro, us being here, I think, you have made our work very easy and, in a sense, made the work of the author much more easier. Because the book, it's about rupturing tradition. Because the answer that Chairman Mao gave to the youth was that actually the father took the daughter up the mountain. Like most of you correctly say, is that there are traditions which came out of particular historical conditions, which may not be relevant at a particular time in history. Do we get it? So what is important is that the inability to question tradition is what in most cases hold us at ransom. Can I repeat it? The inability, even in our political spaces, when we are told, when we challenge certain things, to say, tradition, without interrogating the historical evolution of that particular tradition, becomes a problem. So you have actually answered the question that traditions emerge as a result of certain conditions in a particular context. Now, the first revolutionary step towards our revolution, which the modern academy is not going to tell us, is to question every form of tradition and assume the moral and intellectual authority to say this tradition is still relevant or not relevant. Do we get it? So one of the things, I'm not going to, because it's going to be impossible for me to explain the two volumes, which volume 1 says what and volume 2 says what. No. But I'm going to summarize, I'm going to provide like what I could refer to as a guiding philosophical logic of the two volumes. Is that one of the things we have undermined by writing these two volumes is to think about reality in isolation. Reality in isolation, in a sense that, and I'm happy I'm speaking at the university, where when you are studying biology, you don't have to give a damn about chemistry. When you are studying law, you don't have to give a damn about accounting. When you are studying a certain discipline, you are made to think another discipline is mutually exclusive to the other, or what Lewis Gordon refers to as disciplinary decadence, or what Rayland Rabaga in his book Forms of Phenonism refers to as epistemic apartheid. So one of the things which we have done here, and you will hear when we explain it how we have done it, is that at a university, for example, you must have what is called a subject matter. You can't be all over, isn't it? Those who are doing their dissertations, their thesis. Ne? At a university, you are not allowed, so to speak, to be all over. You can't speak about soil erosion and speak about algorithms. You can't speak about, for example, patents, and then you talk about the problem of climate change, the red pen. The decree committee does not want surprises. It doesn't want surprises. You will be told that what is your subject matter, isn't it? But it was not like that, because the modern academy has evolved itself. Initially, when you read or you go through the works of the so-called great thinkers, your Aristotle, your Socrates, whoever, we have been told are great thinkers, they were dealing with different things. One scholar would be a moral philosopher and become a scientist, isn't it? When you check Descartes, they would study metaphysics and also the physical properties of the universe. They would think about the nature of God, but also the structure of seas, how the importance of water, and a whole lot of things. Now, the evolution of the modern academy got to a point where things are compartmentalized. You just focus on one, you specialize in one thing at the expense of the other. There's no problem about specializing. But the problem that came up is that you are forced to specialize in one thing at the expense of the other. And that's what created the compartmentalization of knowledge production. So what I have done in the 2 volumes, if you read it, is that I speak about things that affect human beings. Whether you speak about insurance companies refusing to process people's claims, for example. Whether you talk about, soil erosion. And like I said initially, whether you talk about patents, whether you talk about emotional labor, where people are working at restaurants, the typical restaurants we know, and black women are told, you must leave your emotions at home, as if human beings are not emotional. So I have touched on a whole lot of things. The centrality of tipping, for example, as employers, put off pressure from themselves in terms of paying workers decent wages. So I can't summarize the entire text, but what I'm saying is that when you go through the text, you will realize that we have gone against focusing on one thing at the expense of other things, other realities that affect the livelihoods of human beings. I am not sure if we get it. So if you, for example, the things that we take for granted, how many of us, look at our bank statements from time to time? Bank charges. You take your bank statement and you go through it diligently and meticulously and see the charges that the bank cannot account for. Of course, they are given, complicated names, and you go through the bank statement. If, for example, you are using F&B and there are certain charges that you don't understand, they are given weird names, and then F&B does that to 10 million people as a conservative number, how much money does it make without incurring any cost? So these are some of the power dynamics that we are dealing with when we are talking about the finance, the monopoly of finance. The other thing we talk about is that I'm sure some of us saw when a family was refused to a claim by an insurance company on TV, and then they took the body, they left it there, and they said, no, because you don't want to process the claim, see what you do with the dead body. And then the insurance company responded, and one of the foundational stories here is of Lydia. So what I do in the book, I story tell political economy and philosophy, and I story tell our lived realities and encounters. So instead of imposing, a philosophical concept and then closing the book, or imposing economic concepts, what I do, I explain economic concept through storytelling. One of the stories which is very emotional is that there was this lady who got a job at a bakery. And then the expectation from her was that, hey, I'm no longer going to be carrying food from home. It's kaftin. The expectation was that. She went to work, and then when it was lunchtime, she wanted to eat the very bread he bakes. And the manager said to her, yes, you bake this bread, but you will have to wait for your salary to buy this bread in order for you to eat it. This is what we came across at New German. It's a real story. It's a real story. What another case which happened in Limpopo is that people who are working, it's a widespread practice even in hotels. People who are working in the kitchen, who are cooking food, are not allowed, let alone to eat, even to taste the food, because that food is company property. And if you eat or taste it without buying, you do what? You steal company property, but also you devalue, the value of the property. It's happening. These are widespread cases that reflects the illogic or the illogical nature of capitalism. So these are some of the things we take for granted, and then we view them in isolation, not as part of the power structure. Yeah. And that's why in most cases, even in our political education sessions, we run for the meta-narratives. We run for things that really do not underscore our lived realities and lived encounters. And then we forget about the day-to-day lived encounters that most of us come across and most of us encounter. So that is the essence of the 2 volumes. So we radically violate epistemic apartheid, where you run with one item from one end of the village to the other, as if it is the only thing that affects society. So that is what we have tried to do. Lastly, this is a 7-8 year project. I started it while I was at the University of KwaZulu-Natal. Towards publication, like I said, that people who are invited in these spaces are people who are, who speak and think in accordance with the dominant establishment. Any other view that is opposed to the establishment, it's not entertained. We fought with publishers. That is why we went for, say, self-publishing. The publishers said, you must change certain things. Change certain things, tone down. People are doing sociology here, will tell you. Instead of talking about class contradictions, Pedro, people talk about conflict theory. Instead of openly saying anti-black racism, they will tell you of other concepts. Instead of allowing you to say imperialism, they will tell you that you are living in a cosmopolitan world. You get a point? So the idea is also to undermine the grammar and vocabulary of oppression and to introduce a revolutionary grammar that even before the period of freedom humanizes us in the process of the struggle. Because that is the problem we encounter, And this is the pressing challenge to us in the academy, and of course, even people are not even going to be working in the academy. But for now, which we need to take into consideration, is that most of our, I think we are going to touch on this on the master class, or sponsor, tomorrow, is that people have taken sides, as I learned. It's either you want to find a niche in the context of unequal power relations, to say, no, I'll just find my space and then pay bills, the notion of paying bills, which is a fucked up notion, especially for our generation in the global south. That as long as I get a space somewhere and then I'm earning a salary, I pay bills, then it's done. Or whatever we do, we use our expertise, whether as an artist, whether as a scholar, or whoever or whatever we may be, to prepare for the downfall of the system that is inherently designed to dehumanize us. These are the choices we have. Now, the problem with our scholars, even those we admire, even on social media, is that they are actually focused on getting perks and tenure. Now, when you are focused on getting perks and tenure, you must have a track record of obedience. So when the Senate or the council sits and considers your name, when it takes out your profile, it must not have a stain of rebellion. It must showcase someone who has been writing articles in renowned journals, someone who has been peacefully attending seminars overseas in Geneva, someone who has never antagonized the status quo. And that is why they are playing it very carefully. And I don't blame them. Because some will tell you that we went to school for 12 years, high school. We went to university. It was very difficult. Our families couldn't afford. So I can't stand a sheet of revolution and taint my name. So in short, what they want, they are building a profile that at some point will reward them. Because there is a time, there is a time when everything we've been doing comes out. You know, so when Senate or council sits, and then you are identified, you behave like Cornel West. We know Cornel West, who has refused tenure there at Harvard, if I'm not mistaken. Who has refused tenure because his profile was muddied with revolutionary writing, revolutionary work, challenging the status quo, calling out white supremacy and racism and patriarchy. So the problem we are facing even ourselves now, it's either we want a niche in the context of unequal power relations and then abandon a decolonial cause and then pay bills. Or, much as we have to make a living and our communities and families get something, the ultimate struggle is to make it impossible for the system to postpone its death, so to speak. And by the way, as I conclude, there is no one who sustains the system other than us. People who are actually working, whether you talk about professionals or scholars, people who are doing the actual work, it's us. So if you withdraw your labor, intellectual and otherwise, the system ceases to exist. And that is why workers always go on strike, because they are the backbone of the economy. So the system doesn't drive itself, it uses us. And in an anti-black, racist, patriarchal world, you can work in a corporate sector and believe that you are doing something, you will get somewhere. But the system at some point will remind you that it can make or break you. Go and read Sehlebolane's book. I don't know if there's anyone who read it. A typical, I don't want to use it pejoratively, coconut, who was studying in Durban, at a very well-off school, had a belief that, I don't want to do anything with politics at university. It will delay my studies. It will delay my success. She went to work for banks, the big banks, ne? And then she believed that she was making it in life. You are rubbing shoulders with white people. They trust you with certain responsibilities. They bring you closer. This is her confession in her book. It's not me speaking ill of her. And then she got angry when the system started saying, do you know, who are we? We can make and break you. And then they started frustrating her. Educated. So the idea of meritocracy in the context of patriarchy and anti-black racism, if I were somewhere, I was going to say, it's nonsensical. It doesn't add up. You can go to school, get educated, but the power structure will always remind you what it is made up of. And it will do so especially because it knows that you don't want to destroy it, you just want to pay bills. So in short, the choice we have, and that is why we are saying an alternative world is possible, but it depends whether we are courageous enough to go beyond the logic of paying bills and destroying the system and building a society that we desire. So when we discuss and engage, I am going to end by, telling you of the solutions that we offer in the book. We are not just posing questions and criticizing. We are having solid proposals that, especially in this context, can become solid, can become sustainable, and also, safeguard the dignity and humanity of everyone. Thank you very much, comrades, for this.
Thank you very much, Mulaudi, for such a thought-provoking input. As you were speaking, I've also started to reflect about what happens in social media general, and some of the experiences I had teaching in the university a few years ago. What you are saying, Mulaudu, if you remember, we had a UKZN graduation ceremony in April. How many of you follow UKZN graduations? You must follow them. You must follow them. They are not as boring as yours here. NMU graduation is like a church, It's like you didn't achieve anything. It's a very cold. It's a very cold ceremony. It's a very cold ceremony. I've been there once or twice. I don't like it. Once. Now, this one we had in April. There was greetings, leadership. Nice to have you in Mandela University. Welcome. There was an incident that happened in this year's UKZN graduation, where a young man, after being kept by the Vice Chancellor, he was crying, walking off the stage. And fortunately, the photographer took that image, and then it circulated around Facebook and Twitter. You remember that image? Yeah. And then, when it circulated, most philosophers of Facebook started to theorize and so on. You ever follow those people on Facebook where anything and everything that happens, they always have an opinion. They always have something to say, So they began to theorize. Others even took it back that, slavery in 1700 is responsible for. You were one of them. You took it to a frontier war that took place in the 15th century. But the young man was trending, Mulaud, for a good 2 weeks, got sympathy, and we got employment. And even when he got employment, there was a huge fight again. One Nyamazana started to say, oh, okay. So it's clear now that if we want to graduate and work, we must cry. As soon as Mutwa keeps me, I must release them. Must go on the floor and cry, then I know. My journey into APSA is secured. What does that say about the society we have? I want us now to process that episode quite critically. I wrote about it, and Andile Mklutama saw my article and he chopped my neck about it. I was saying something else. I was just trying to provoke. I like provoking the decolonization comrades. And I always succeed. They get provoked. So what does that episode mean about our society, our economy, the conditions that we live under? Do we even have something called an economy to begin with? What is an economy to begin with? What does that say about black life, black achievement in university? What does that tell us about the state of blackness amongst the youth, amongst students, amongst all these institutions that we are told to go to in order to better our lives? So many institutions are created. There's a school, there's a university, there's NYTA, there's IEC. Hey man, but the conditions of our people are still the same. But those who own the means of production, they are having a holiday on our land. So where is the education system that is going to equip black people with the necessary means to also own the means of production and live better lives thereof? So there are so many things that do not make sense about our society, and they've been going on for too long. And I'm sure now, because I see so many of you who have been in this university for quite a long time, I won't mention names, but I can see a leader who has now exceeded 8 years here. Now, let's assume you arrived at the university when you were 19 years old. And now it's 8 years later. You are now what? 27. When you are 27 years old, and we are still talking about black poverty, it therefore means that your grandchild is going to be speaking about the same issues, because we've already passed your generation now. 27 years ago, a generation is 20 years. So a generation has now passed. You are now 27, and I'm sure by 27, you've been here for what, 8 years? There's no way now you don't have kids at 27. I'm sure you have one or two. You have three. There's no way you've been here for 8 years. I think you've been here for 2. So there's a high possibility, in fact it's not a possibility, it's a fact, that your grandchild, since these problems have not been addressed at the age of 27, it means your child and the child of your child is also going to be talking about the same issues when they are 21 years old. Clearly the system that we've been using all along is not working. What then needs to be done? And that alternative won't come from anywhere else other than from the brains of black people. Mulawud, the system of education, it is so powerful. I'll just make a scenario about how racism works, even when white people are not in the room. I used to teach a class of human rights. Firstly, I didn't like why the module was called human rights. I hate that concept itself, But it's an engagement for another day. So, these students, when they talk in class, they like to use this misplaced language of this government. that no, you see, we are children of the previously disadvantaged. You know? So, racism has a way of controlling how you think as a black young person in the room, right? You know you are angry, and there's this something you want to say in class, right? You want to say white people, you want to say black people, but racism has a way of disciplining your thought to the extent that you even process what you want to actually say in your head, so that by the time you verbalize it, it comes out polished so that it doesn't offend white people in the room, whether they are in the room or not. You know? So you find someone that, no, these ones that are benefiting are people of a particular race. You know? A student leader says it on TV. Yeah, these ones that are benefiting are people of a particular class. South Africa has a class problem. So by saying class means I had a safe landing. I didn't offend anyone. You know, the whites are fine, the blacks will think I'm key. You know, class issues. And it's not taking us forward. You know, children of the previous disadvantaged background. What is previous about our disadvantage when it is happening today? So volumes of documents are printed by government that no, what is that thing they also like to say? VUV. Blacks in general, Africans in particular. So the theoretical tools we use sometimes, they won't take us beyond the bridge that we're trying to cross. Hence, the knowledge that you imbibe must be in the most radical form, so that it touches everybody in the room, so that by the time you go out, you are well trained. You can process yourself afterwards, but when we're in the classroom, you must be able to call a spade a spade. That was the style we adopted at sociology and anthropology at the time. We call a spade a spade. But I hear why economists are counting, the journey is still very far, Shem. They don't even mention decolonization in that curriculum. I've never heard decolonization being taught in the concepts of supply and demand. You know? In fact, if you mention that, you fail the test. So, let's have a conversation about the alternative world that we could build. And when I saw the poster mentioning the word socialism, I immediately called the former president of the SRC here. I asked him, Hlumelo, can you tell me, when was the last time you saw the word socialism in a poster of an event at Nelson Mandela University? The word socialism. And he said, Nomunt, I still have my Outlook emails. And to check and check and check and check. He says, hey, the first poster I see, it's from 2013. So even Moladi, on the concepts we use, the words we use, there's been a disappearance of them in a university, a place where each and every school of thought is supposed to be tabled and tested. I said to him, okay, socialism is 2013. Can you search diversity? When was the last time it appeared in a poster at Nelson Mandela University? He said, Brul 2022, I'm receiving more than 100 such results. So diversity, non-racialism, social cohesion, the flag, planting trees. I heard you had a Mandela tonton up some other time. Order. We are in an event of cricket. But the cricket has told us to critique. Professor Andre Kidd used the word critique. So, he'd like to say, you must literally critique. That's how he speaks. So we'll critique the SRC and cricket. Even if you called us to be here and gave us refreshments, we'll still critique you. I will take hands in no particular order. Will be the first one. A number of concepts have now been placed on the table, on the education system, on the economy, on the ways of life, and what needs to be the alternative. You'll be number 2. You'll be number 3. Let's have that as the first round. Number 1.
Okay, Isoletum Africa. Thanks to whoever organized this gathering, the SRC. Okay, thanks to the SRC for organizing this gathering. I don't have a question or an addition to the author and the volumes of the books that we have today, because I'm still here to go through them myself. The one thing that pains me as someone who politically was bred in the Black Power movement and now currently in the Pan-African Student Movement of Azania PASMO, is that this venue is too small. A gathering of this nature was supposed to be organized in a big venue. The SRC, in collaboration with other political organizations in the school, were supposed to mobilize as many students, black children, to come to such a space so that they can receive Lumkhabulo Ulapha Africa. So next time, my advice is that we need a bigger venue and mobilize as many students as we can so that they can come here, so that we can contribute to the national political consciousness of our people towards the revolutionary struggle. Thanks.
Number 2.
Okay, thank you. My name is Vuyokazi Guam. Let me also take this chance to thank the SRC, Dr. Pedro, and Mlaudi. Is it okay if I call you Comrade Mlaudi? Thank you as well for the presentation and allowing yourself to be here. I want to engage on the economic aspect of the book. And it is Socialism, Nomunt Omusha. I don't know if you know, but a new concept is termed to divide the economy of black people and the broader economy of South Africa. And it's called township economy, where there is a separation when they're counting the GDP of counting the township economy outside the broader GDP of South Africa, the economic South Africa. And this coining of the township economy, they are saying it's done to measure how the township economy is contributing to the broader economy and ways to help the township economy to boost their GDP or their percentage in the GDP for the broader economy. Now with that, we understand with the township economy, we have our spazas, where young people are having their businesses, black people, women, vendors, etc. And having that, this is where black people thrive. Black people will employ other black people in their small spazas. They will have their farms. They will employ their own within their own economy. Sure, it's not the richest, but it's the most thriving one. So now, the political side is set to look into that township economy. They want to form ways to make those small businesses to be able to be taxable. I don't know if you touched on your book, but for me, when I first heard of this concept, I thought this is very progressive. Black people, finally our economies will be looked at, they will bring things. But also, listening today, I feel like it's another way of tapping into where black people are thriving on their own. Because as much as it's not as rich and as progressive as we would want it to be, but when you want to assist it, you attach the thing that it will contribute to our GDP, it will contribute to the growth of South Africa's economy, and not the growth of the township economy alone that you separated on its own. So it's another thing probably that will be written, Nova City, in the long run, that we neglect it now. It's going to be a problem for the future as young black people. In the sense, Dr. Pedro, or Comrade Pedro, when Ustua, we're going to build Pick and Pay, we're going to build Boxer, we're going to build so-and-so there. And then we're going to ask these spazas to buy from there so that we can tax them, so that we can get the VAT purchase or whatever. The most progressive will be Pick and Pay, Boxer, and not those small businesses of black people. So my question is, well, there's this thing of our economy trying to tap into the black townships and trying to improve them. But will it really improve the livelihood of black people? Will it really improve the livelihood of young black people, young black entrepreneurs? Even now, young black entrepreneurs are suffering with getting funds and so on and so forth. So will tapping into that coined township economy improve the livelihood of black people and the black townships in our economies? Thank you.
Testing. Greetings to everyone who's present. My name is Luzuko Mbumbulwana. Interesting point from Uvuvu. For me, I just want to comment before I go into what I want to say also. What my view is on that tapping in of the township economy. What I've been seeing happen, Kulo program of tapping in, is how these bigger supermarkets, which are internationally owned, are the ones who are actually invading the township space. So to an extent, Fomna, I wouldn't say, okay, in the long run, even those superplaza shops that are already there will reach a point where they are excluded in their own environment by those bigger supermarkets about Pick and Pay. Because one example, Pick and Pay, I think, owns about Rhino and about Boxers. They want to expand and try and create this thing about, okay, we want to lower prices for people who can't afford and wara. But if you look at it in a broader perspective, they are actually going to invade that township economy to the detriment of black people, obviously. So I do think now it's something that we need to actually look into, because for the longest time, black people get excluded in whatever. But then if you look at it, as Caesar ezinto, they come, ngati, it's for the benefit of black people, but then as broadenisha, you actually see what the plan was nje, to begin with. And then going into what I actually wanted to talk to also is that problem which is in universities of having lecturers or professors who actually want to align and secure the back to the detriment of the students that they're feeding and indoctrinating knowledge of into. Example that I saw now yesterday on social media was that of a professor from UJ who was saying certain crimes are not serious crimes. And then I thought to myself, abantwana obatishayo, what are you teaching them? There are crimes that are bigger than other crimes. That crime is Mr. Palapala of hiding dollars and didn't declare. So all these professors now are defending Londo Leoba. Mr. Palapala did not make a serious crime by not declaring that money. So an ordinary individual would not be considered to not have done a crime. But then because there's protectors, okay, he's going to be defended. But then, kwisense yoba okay ufundisa ndoni chief kodwa umepha abantwana by 1,000. So you can tell ba okay apha siyanhlanywa apha. So even those people that are there, our employers at universities, obviously they're securing the bag. They're the problems themselves. So I think naleyo is something that we need to actually be critical of. And then last one is, I don't know, a question, Kemhlambi, of how we can foster or push for the government to, or universities in general, to want to create an environment or skill the students or the youth to create for themselves, ne? Because Mr. Palapala by the youth must have businesses, they must create jobs for themselves and employ other ntontoni, but you can see that they are the barriers that are there. So because those barriers are there, they are meant to exclude us. And hence the perpetuation of this poverty, the sugar coat and whatever. And to bring it back home, in my discipline, in the sciences, you get taught those things that we get taught, and how to analyze samples in the lab and whatever. But then, when I'm being trained to go work, it's for an establishment that is white and international, for example, a mine, you want to go test those things. And when I think about it, in South Africa, for example, if I'm being taught those things or going and testing, I'm not testing Anglo-Plat, which is a white establishment that is owned by international white people that own those minerals, and we are not being taught to want to tap into that space of being competition to those white establishment. We are not being equipped, okay, and we're not being given resources of wanting to go and be in that environment, not as workers, if I can say, but as people who are going to benefit as owners of those means of production. So I don't know if I'm making sense, but yeah.
Thank
I don't
you
know
very much. Very three good comments. No, you didn't pick up your hand in the first round. Let's invite Mulaudi to come through and engage these three inputs. Now I see that there's appetite for hands. We'll open the second and the last round after the first one. Sure.
Thanks, Doc. Fast. The notion of a township economy is bullshit. You know, here's the other. I think engagements are helping because they allow us to expand more. You know, when you introduce a book, you must be narrow. You must be careful whether you are going to be too wide. What? The idea is this. If you check, Petro, the notion of township economy has also become a profitable enterprise by petty bourgeois academics. You know what they do? In building profiles, research, they identify a niche. You know, if we Google and check who wrote extensively about township economy, we must get your name. You know, so what they have done is to perpetuate a settler colonial myth of a township economy. How can we have a township economy within a settler colonial society that remains untransformed and violent? So you just, because the notion of township economy means, okay, we move away from where these dominant economies are. We are going to the township and we are going to thrive. It doesn't make sense because it still operates within a settler colonial society that is anti-black, that is patriarchal, that is misogynistic, that is homophobic. That's how it is. So the notion of township economy, it's nothing else but an appeal to thrive where colonialism has extended without disrupting power relations of settler colonialism. That's how it is. So the notion of township economy, it will never work unless we tamper with the power relations that affect the entire economy, whether township or what. And the other thing which I want to, while you were speaking about township economy, comrades, unless we challenge, like you are correct, Petro. Unless we challenge the concepts and the vocabulary used by our state, our political parties, our civil society formations, we are not going to go anywhere. What the hell is the cost of living? The notion of the cost of living. Just think about it. So the poverty, you know, the notion of the cost of living, it's part of our national documents. It's part of our policy making. So the presupposition is that life has to be a cost, has to have a cost, while life has to be lived effortlessly. So I was writing something, I just want to read it to you when we were arguing with another guy who always brags. I did, PhD in economics. So the other, I'm saying to this guy, in all honesty, the normalization of the language of the cost of living represents everything wrong with our society. We shouldn't even associate cost with life. Life has to be lived effortlessly. If that is not the case, it simply means that there is a problem with our society and its power relations. Look, associating life with costs, whether low or high, presupposes that one way or the other life has to have a cost. We can speak about levels and degrees. This is rubbish. Why? Such a language embodies strong philosophical and ideological assumptions that inform policy and state planning. Soon the National Planning Commission will use it, if it has not yet, as a metric to assess or paint a picture of the living conditions of people. And state planners will sanctimoniously beat their chest and say, we have reduced the cost of living. Life should not have a cost. It must be lived effortlessly. And this is what we emphasize here. Lastly, you will respond to some of these things because now I'm a bit agitated. The concept of skills. All of us, I can bet here, more than maybe 98%, we have fallen to the myth that we have a skills deficit as a fundamental problem. Isn't it? Sonke siyavuma ukuthi lento issue is state, issue ama political parties, all of them, that young people have a skills, there is a skills deficit. Rubbish. Look, I am from a township called Nomunt in Durban. People who are building mansions, doing flooring, are people who are not certificated, but are people who, in fact, like 2-3 days back, I was even posting about it saying, this is where I am living. Vans from the surrounding suburbs, Kloof, Westville, and New German, they come, ne? And park and fetch people who are going to do all these things. They maintain mansions. And thereafter they go back to their shanty towns. Mechanics. So it's just that they don't have the paper security. So the very notion of skill, it is used as far as it is related to profit. There are many uncles who in our villages, communities, who are carpenters, who are doing a lot of good work, but they are not going to be said to be skilled because they don't have the paper security. Lastly, there is what you call National Home Builders Association. It's a national association. If you want to build a proper home or you want some advice on other things, you go to it and they advise you to say, okay, this is what you have to do. Many people who are building or buying houses now, they don't go to that. They don't go to that institution. They prefer the very people who in the mainstream are known to be unskilled but are so competent, who can build mansions from the ground up. So the very notion of skill, in volume 2, we have got 45 pages dealing with it, that it's a myth that the idea of skills deficit is a fundamental program, or it's a fundamental problem. The idea which we are fed is that young black people must run around, update, write CVs to fit into the economy. But we don't ask, why can't the economy be designed in such a way that it responds to the needs of human beings? Now you have a philosophical conundrum. A being must fit into a thing. A thing is assumed perfect. A human being has to run around, inexperienced, unskilled. Now you have to run around in order to feed. And by the way, the economy has been treated, has been personified. The economy is ill. You know, how you wield, you rally emotional sympathy for a thing at the expense of a human being. All of us, we want to fit into a thing. And the assumption is that this thing is very perfect. You need CVs, you need skills, you fit into a thing. And even if you get employed, you are underemployed because you are underpaid. You get a point? Because you are underpaid. So if you are underpaid, you will seek alternative ways of compensating for lack of pay. Indebtedness. Indebtedness leads to anxiety. And anxiety leads to many people now relying on antidepressants. A lot of, if you go to pharmacies, 2 kinds of medications that are used, kakulu. It's your morning after and your various forms of antidepressants or anxiety pills. That's the truth. If you go to pharmacies, because so many people are relying on antidepressants, you know that, and the implication is that when you swallow antidepressants, you believe that you are a problem. You have to fix yourself. While the power structure has to be fixed. So you swallow them until your body doesn't take them. How many people have you had? They go to work without smoking. They have not smoked. They grew up as Christians, as people who are like well-behaved. When they get to ABSA or Standard Bank, they will tell you that if you don't smoke, you can't stand the shitty power relations. That's how people deal with anxiety, despair, agony, as a result of the capitalist, violent, unequal capitalist working relations. As I learned, Petro, you'll cover some of the things, ne? The cult of investment, the notion of investment, that we need investors and all over. Look, how do you go all over and even overseas, say you want investors, while you don't use your political power to discipline capital and tell capital that, look, you have trillions in the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. Unlock those millions and invest in the productive sectors of the economy. 1. 2, there is an argument we advance here. There is a doctrine called odious debt. The doctrine of odious debt says, it's an internationally recognized doctrine by UN. It says, any debt that was incurred by an undemocratic regime, a democratic government has no obligation to pay. Now the fundamental question is, why did ANC abandon RDP and never used the doctrine of odious debt to fund RDP in state-adopted gear? Because it had no political and moral obligation to service a debt that was incurred by an undemocratic regime. It's a doctrine of 1948, that any debt that was incurred by an undemocratic regime, a democratic society has no obligation to pay it off. Why did we not use the doctrine of odious debt? So that we don't service the debt and fund RDP, which was a socially, biased, or a policy or a program that was going to prioritize social and economic services. But you will get more in the book, because some of the questions you are raising are very provocative, and the idea of the group of companies. There are very few companies, comrades, who are given names. Very few companies. You know what happens? There are two things. There is group of companies given different names in different spaces. But when you realize, you check, you research, they are owned by just few companies. It's just like cross-shareholdership. You'll find that shareholders of a particular company, which is involved in the manufacture of car parts, are also shareholders of car tracker companies. Car tracker companies, 1 or 2, are shareholders. That is why there is a notion of a hostile takeover. So even if you have a wonderful idea as a black person, there is hostile takeover is knocking to say what they do before, if you go to fundraise in a public platform, it's called, there is a concept for it. Prospectus, there is some, that thing. Where you take your company to valuation before you raise funds publicly. And they value, they check, yeah. So people who are dominant in that industry, what they do in order to facilitate a hostile takeover, they devalue your company. The moment they devalue it, you see no worth in pursuing it. And they take over, and then the wonderful idea you had goes off. So unless you challenge the power structure, you'll have all these wonderful ideas. Young people must be entrepreneurs and all those things. It can't work. The power structure is the problem, and that is what we need to deal with. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Let me deal with one, then we go to round 2. There's someone who spoke about professors who are bored, pala pala and so on. Now, I'm going to club both of them, pala pala and professors. Firstly, you see in universities now, we have a very big crisis where knowledge has been turned into a commodity. In fact, that title of the title of professor, it's a commodity itself. PhDs are commodities. Now, what they do, I heard NRF was celebrating, I think they clocked $1 billion in subsidies that they give to universities. And subsidies go to people in university who produce what is called a research output. It's a nice word, billions. But when you zoom into these research outputs, and who is receiving these billions, and how do they speak to the national question, you find that these two things are on opposite ends. You can see it in a university as a hardcore racist, produce volumes of papers. I saw there's something called critical whiteness. Whiteness studies. So you just call it critical whiteness. Volumes of outputs. NRF doesn't ask what type of research are you doing and its impact. It just issues billions to this one who seems to be producing outputs. So you are sitting with a government that is pumping funds into a system that it does not even have a transformative strategy for. It does not even track what significant impact are these funds making in the actual material lives of black people. If at all research does inform a different approach to emancipate our people, no, they don't even think that far. So if your proposal is nice, it's critical whiteness, you have books, you have professors, you have conferences, you get billions. So it tells you there's a crisis. Knowledge has become a commodity that is up for sale to a bidder who is ready to accumulate. I'm sure you see there are also many of them. They appear on TV every day. They are called political analysts. Don't learn. What kind of a career is that? Political analyst. And when you listen to this analysis, you realize, hey, what this person is teaching a class in a university. I mean, there was a publication of a Zondo report. You know almost how voluminous that document is. Zondo gave President Ramaphosa that huge document at 6 p.m. 6:15, there was a political analyst analyzing the report. When did this professor read this document in 15 minutes to analyze it on TV for the nation? So it tells you that there's no knowledge that is taken serious by that person. He just wants to make sure that at 6:15, surely South Africans are watching TV by that time. By the time they switch it off, they must see Professor myself on TV analyzing this document that was given to President Ramaphosa 5 minutes ago. So, I mean, even my 9-year-old can see that there's a problem in this country when it comes to the industry of knowledge. It's in a huge crisis. It's in a huge crisis. We have commercial universities in this country who survive on student fees only. If you can't pay, they kick you out because they see you as a consumer, not as a young citizen who is here to receive quality education to emancipate your mind so that you can change your society. They see a consumer. And tell me, if indeed they were not commercial universities, let's say they were really educating you for something valuable, how can a person stay in the education system for 12 years until they're 18 years old? When they pass matric, they are told that you are not skilled yet. 12 years in the education system until you became 18 years. 12 years. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You are told you are not skilled yet. We need to take you to university and teach you anthropology for 4 years. And still be unemployed after that. Right? So you go to a graduation ceremony, 12 students have passed pharmacy, 500 have a degree in anthropology. And you tell me that makes sense to you. Are we running an education system or are we running a commercial enterprise? It's a commercial enterprise. Because even after that 4 years of anthropology, in fact, it might not even be 4 years, because you still have NSFAS that is going to screw you over. You won't drop out modules. Take one from first year. It takes you 7 years to finish it. Even after you are done those 7 years, man, you are not skilled yet. You need an internship. You don't have work experience. Come in as an intern. In fact, now that you are an intern, there's a budget cut from the Vice Chancellor, you know. We want to pay you 1.2 nyana stipend. You're doing labor that is done by professionals in the office, but your payment is called a stipend. 1.2. How old are you by that time now? 28, 29, eh? Your white counterparts are celebrating their 5 years of marriage, and they are buying their third property now in Turkey and Ukraine. When you are still being skilled. You're not yet skilled yet, man. How can an 18-year-old be unskilled? 18 years umdala, man. 18 years you can even vote. That's how old you are. So how can you be 18 years still not old? I mean, you have a matric certificate, but there's nothing you can do. You can't even fix your own phone. So there's something fundamentally wrong with this system. Fundamentally. So the concepts, yeah, I agree with cost of living. Living is not supposed to have a cost. There's also this thing called a poverty line. Minimum standard of living. Nice concepts that make absolutely no sense. And there are research funds allocated to them. You know, there are even people who specialize, you know, so they know, me, I am a top scholar in the poverty line. So you're a top scholar of studying poverty. You know, So it tells you that we are running a commercial enterprise, and they don't care. They will run Nelson Mandela University for so many years doing the same nonsense. They don't care. As long as it generates revenue for it to keep running as a company, as a commercial enterprise. Maybe that's why Nama gave up in these universities. Let's go to the second round and take hands. One. This is the last round. Then we close the session. I will come to your question on the, when we come back, Mulaut, that we must extend our classes to a bigger venue. 1, 2. Now, 2, behind you. 2, 3, 4. Let's take 5 hands. 5. Didn't you speak in the first round? Okay. Let's regulate this second round. Let's create those rules of professors. Can you try to make 1 point hit straight to the target for a maximum of 2 minutes? Just try. In that order. Number 1.
Okay, no, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to ask the question. So in this process of reimagining the society that we want to transition into, right, my question is, what is the role of policy, right? Given the fact that, you know, in the past, perhaps there have been institutions that have been put into place to try and reimagine the society. For instance, you take institutions such as the Competition Commission, which try to regulate monopolies and so on and so forth, ICASA and Spectrum and so on and so forth, and somehow try to make an attempt to reimagine the society we live in. But there have been massive shortfalls and failures with the policies that have been put into place. So my question is policy then still a legitimate vehicle that we can use to reimagine our society, and how do we go about, you know, developing this policy and it being reviewed on a continual basis? Yeah.
Brilliant. Number 2. No. Go, Mike. Stay.
Thank you. Hi to everyone. And last time I met you, Dr. Pedro, you are still missed there. So it's quite nice to see you after the fact.
Thank you.
I think my question rather is, or my comment is towards, because I'm afraid I might sound too not as radical because, yeah, so Mlauti might come for me. But I think you speak something about the whole thing of how education is compartmentalized, you know. Every person has got their own speciality, and however, we notice that there's a lot of shifting towards transdisciplinarity. I know that the NMU does that. They even kind of focus on it in a particular manner. Don't you think that that's one of the ways in which the academy is trying to kind of navigate and move into these spaces? And also, in as much as there's this whole transdisciplinarity thing, I noticed that for me, when you kind of in that space, you find yourself not really knowing where to anchor yourself, even in this knowledge production that you are busy with, because maybe methodologically you are not here nor there, and then you get criticized in a lot of manners. So I don't know, but do you not think that that particular solution kind of addressed that issue? And just another 2 minutes, I'm hoping, is the issue of generational kind of, I don't know, the generational process. So we had our moment in which we were radical, we had these engagements, we spoke and stuff, and then we get pacified as time goes on because, you know, life happens. How then do we suggest that we move on and have these intergenerational kind of engagements to ensure that we don't have another generation of radical, have a moment whereas, yeah, you just make the world stop, and then afterwards, the next year you get tired. You get tired when you are or too radical, and then all of us are exhausted, and then we go back to square one, whereas we starting, sometimes we even move a few steps backwards. So how do we ensure that we can have, I think that gentleman in the corner, motivate until there's certain readiness in which we are able to ensure that a revolution or rapture happens and it can remain at that instead of reinventing the old wheel. So thanks.
Yeah. Number 3, yayibona mos iphethe namanje. First.
On. Izolito. My question, it is on the immediate issues. Ne? It's more like of, even the title of the book, Socialism. It always speaks of outrooting the disease as opposed to dealing with the symptoms. So now, I want to ask the question of symptoms. As we imagine the new world, we come up with some stuff, and that stuff, knowing that they are inflicted by capitalism, yet these immediate conditions, how to, let me make example. The case of gender-based violence, the black-on-black violence, we all know that they derive from white supremacy. Now, we have these people in front of us, and I know this person. We have this representative, the black government. We know that they are not our problem. How do we deal with these people so we may go and deal with the capitalists at the top? How do we deal with such cases of gender-based violence perpetrators before we could go and treat the main cause? I'm not sure if you captured.
Sure. 4.
Yeah. No, engosi kakhulu. No, mna ndizawuvela kule ndawo. Oh, sorry. I think I will come in kule part yoba knowledge production plus ne governance and the policy perspective. I think between there's a term that we say universities autonomous. I think because there is no much intervention from government in terms of influencing universities into actually formulating research that is in line with the agendas of the government. Because now the research that is being done now, you will find that is so much parallel to what you are Agenda 2030, that document is IDP, I'm not sure, from the ruling government. So we have that thing. And lastly, in protecting the people who are conforming to the status quo that is currently happening, I don't think it's fair on the people who are writing up to PhD and everything to call them out, because there is an issue of power struggle here. And up until we deal with the power struggle, we can't just deal with a human being for climbing the ladder, because there's no other standard that has been put in place. So this is the standard that we are going on with. So we can't really be harsh on them up until we deal with the root cause. We should not deal with individuals.
Sure. I didn't note you. Last one.
Leadership, you noted me as number 5. The House can assist you.
Was that not number 5?
It's me, number 5, leader. Unless it's a deliberate sabotage.
No, I can never sabotage you. Yeah, you're right. 5, then 6.
Okay. Okay.
2 minutes.
I greet the House at large, Mulaudi. Thanks, Force. Look, leader, man, can in future not police the engagement of this type, allow ideas to flourish. But I'm sure that there is a reason that you are pushing to 2 minutes. Because I wanted to come to preamble that how wise scientists in history came up with the concept of nothingness and nothing. As a result, they couldn't dominate the concept. Every time they try to alter it, it loses the sense of its meaning. and then it went to the extent that they imposed nothingness to black people. I wanted to come to this thing of black township economy, and it doesn't make sense to me, and it's nonsense, because blacks are embodiment of nothingness, and we seem that we want to separate ourselves to a larger economy that seeks to suppress the very same old black people. Because I argue that black people don't have a material base to produce and reproduce themselves. But can I speak without this thing? Okay. Okay, it's fine, I will try. Yeah. If we understand South Africa as an idea that was founded in a dispossession and conquest of African, then we will understand that. Okay, with the hope that
you are now left with 30 seconds.
Ish. Okay, Mulaud, maybe I will engage you outside. I wanted to ask, what does it mean to end something that we have never been included to be part of? What does it mean to end something that we never included to be part of? I'm coming to that township economy, which is, I argue, it's nonsense and it's not progressive. It's not taking us anywhere. We're running circle. It won't assist us. And then we need to develop also a philosophy that is going to go beyond orthodox Marxism and see race and racism as an inner core, and any other philosophy as epiphenomenal, because the primary contradiction is race, not class.
Ish. Okay. Comrade Mulaodi, so you made an example here of a family that was trying to climb up a mountain, but one of them were losing power. So I'm interested, whether in one of your volumes you are unpacking this, because as much as you were making it as an example, it's a crisis that we are faced with in our communities, in our daily living. If I can make an example, you can go outside today and find community members toy-toying or picketing, fighting for electricity or water or whatever. And then you will find those that are just sitting in their own corner saying, yes, Tina, we do have water in our houses, or I'm a professor so-and-so, so I don't belong in those kind of struggles. So how do we close that gap? Which is the same thing that we are struggling with in our trade unions. As a person who's coming from a space of trade union, it's the same thing. It's how the employers are winning employees, because you will get to a case where an employee will say, I'm more educated, I know how to speak English, instead of looking to the Labor Relations Act and align themselves to the Labor Relations Act and align themselves to the what has happened, what caused the case. But they will prefer to say, no, I will speak for myself, I don't need any representative. So there's that division, which I am more interested to have you unpacked it in your books, in one of your volumes? Because we are really struggling with divisions and more dividing ourselves as the black poor working class. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for the engagement. I see now we're left with 10 minutes on the dot on YouTube Live. So we've been requested to wrap it up by 5 p.m. Right, I'm going to call you to just wrap up when you come to the podium. Just two things on what you raised about having these sessions opened up. I hope the SRC president is listening to that request. And I'm glad that you are bringing a scholar to PE and you are keeping him for the weekend to have a series of sessions across the 3-day program. I think that's a norm that we must now adopt. When someone takes time to come to the Eastern Cape in PE, let's exploit the presence of that person to the fullest by having these classes traveling across the institution. Another good platform to host seminars of this nature is actually inside the residences, you know that? Because in the residence space, it's where students are already organized for you. And that the residence must be a place of learning in itself. And it's clear that these sessions, actually sessions are supposed to happen every day. Formal and informal sessions. Because we can see the gap, you know. You come to the classroom, we teach gender consciousness every day. On the weekend, we hear that there was a gender-based violence case done by a student. So it tells you that with GBV, we take 2 steps forward, and then we take 10 steps back every single month. Meaning the work of engaging each other to change our mindsets is an exercise that must happen every day. A university is a place of knowledge production, full stop. So here, you have sacrificed your time from home to stay in PE for the whole year so that you do the labor of the mind. That is what this place is created for. We're not fighting people with the PhDs. Please, let not everyone live here with that misunderstanding. I didn't mean it that way. You know, what I was saying is, don't do a PhD because you want to score it as a commodity to advance your own selfish ends. You know, people have PhDs. They have red gowns all over the country. But when you search Mulaudi, what is it exactly? The topic that this person was pursuing in the PhD, you find that no man, this is nonsense. The person does a PhD on cleaning cats. It's possible. NRF doesn't check. You can write a proposal that you want to do a PhD on how to clean rabbits and cats. And then you must say dog, you know, to cleaning a cat. Hotel. So we want PhDs that are going to talk to pressing matters that affect our people. You know, we are going to problematize this township economy nonsense. A township is a product of land dispossession. It's a product of colonialism. It's a product of a migrant labor system whose roots is the dispossession of black people by the white colonizer. So if we are normal thinking people, we're not even supposed to be glorifying townships. Those are hells created by the colonizer. Molaudi, please come forward to wrap up the session for us. I'm not going to stand up again. Once Molaudi is done talking, the person who's going to do a vote of thanks must come automatically on the stage and take us to refreshments. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Comrade Petro. I won't take long. I will answer to the question of policy, the role of policy, competition. I think a comrade who spoke about, I think that person has read the book. Because when we went to the launch, we actually invited Competition Commission. Mr. Bonakele, Temkosi Bonakele. Because if there is any institution that we give credit in the book, is the Competition Commission. You will see when you read the 2 volumes, it's in both volumes. Because the Competition Commission, more than any civil society formation, more than any political party, is the one that has came in for the public. You talk about the price of garlic during COVID. You talk about Tiger Brands, the corruption of Tiger Brands. the illegal raising of the price of bread. You talk about corruption in the car manufacturing parts. You talk about almost everything that affects, the public, especially the working class. So the Competition Commission has played a very huge role. And it stands to be seen whether the new leadership, because Themkosi now is giving over power to a next layer of leadership, whether they are still going to play that important role. Because what happens is that you get bored. When we had a meeting, when I was working on the book with a Themkosi Bonagel, we were at where we were, he showed us the office of Transnet, which was hired by Transnet, which they were investigating. Transnet left its offices at Carlton Center in Joburg, its building, and went to hire a multi-million building. It was a centene. Yeah. So he was very forthright, and the question I posed to him was, have you not been threatened or bribed like that? These things happen. It depends on your moral standing and what you are committed to. And the work that guy has done with his group has shown that things can happen. During COVID, while doctors were telling us that the best way to treat COVID at home is it's garlic and what? Lemon and ginger. And then our ShopRite raised the prices, and then Competition Commission came in. But the inherent limitation of Competition Commission is that it recommends for prosecution. It doesn't have prosecutorial powers. And it only says, hey, don't do this, like anti-competitive behavior. But beyond that, the role has to be taken by political parties. It's a pity we don't have a powerful socialist movement in the country, and I repeat it, like a united left socialist movement that could be genuinely committed to a socialist cause. You have fragmented, formations claiming socialism, and some going to parliament or some fighting in their own, little corners. So that's the problem we have. So policy is very important. I don't want to downplay the role of policy. The problem is that if policy is not taken to its logical conclusion, policy gets eroded. And I want to go to the notion, to the Labor Relations Act. You know what is happening now, even at CCMA? Commissioners who are progressive, who are biased towards workers, are dismissed. The case of Kuboni in KZN, chased, and then you went to SAFT. You get a point. Went to work for NUMSA. Because what employers are doing, they bribe commissioners at CCMA. You go there, you have already lost a case. That's what happens. The Labor Relations Act, again, another regress is that the idea of voting when you go to strike, that workers must vote because some workers are not interested in the notion of a strike, so there must be a secret vote, whether workers agree or not. So, yes, you see. So when policies are not taken to their logical conclusion, they become regressive, and they get eaten away and overshadowed by reactionary politics. And that is what is happening now. The compartmentalization of knowledge, and whether the notion of transdisciplinarity and multidisciplinarity is an antithesis. I think it is, and I think you've raised a very important point. But I still believe that I think it's very few universities who are genuine in terms of transdisciplinary knowledge, in terms of multidisciplinary knowledge. Many are just, it's a token. No, because it's like the notion of diversity. In the university reports, once you use multidisciplinary and transdisciplinarity, and then you get a mark. So it's only a few. It's only a few. And if those who are studying philosophy, our philosophy departments are still influenced by analytic philosophy. You know, as opposed to continental philosophy, which was the basis of black radical thought, by the way. So there is still some bias towards some certain ideas, but it could be a potential to overcome compartmentalization, because you are able to say, oh, okay, we are dealing with climate change. How about the notion of soil erosion? How about the notion of environmental racism? We factor in our research. So it could be a potential to overcome the compartmentalization of knowledge, if really scholars are genuine about it. Intergenerational discussions is true. The process of revolution is exhausting. I was talking to the guy you were asking about, he was saying, hey, Kuluva, I'm tired now. This thing is exhausting, you know. Sometimes you feel so low, I'm telling you. Sometimes you feel like giving up. You know, I was telling my younger sister that, you know, when depression and anxiety kicks in, it doesn't knock. And it doesn't say, hey, it's me. Even if you write about me, I won't spare you. So there are times when you feel like, yes, I can't do this. You get it? So, and naturally so, our mentally, emotionally, psychologically, we get exhausted. It's natural. It happens, you know. And this guy was saying, Kuluva, you know, this notion we always criticize of paying the bills. I think now is the salvation, man. But he bounced back the following day. And we can't give up. It's Kuluva. So you are correct. Intergenerational discussions will help so that the baton is taken by others, while others are doing other things. Because preaching to the converted is also a problem. Because you preach to people who already know your Fanon, your Biko, and other things of socialism, you know. But when you bring in, you know, like in the text, we are having a topic called Catch Them Young. What they do in churches, the Sunday thing, you know, the Sunday thing. You know, it's very powerful because what it does, it sustains the project. It sustains the project beyond me, because I come and go. And those who come up become Sunday school teachers also. That's what happens, you know. So it's very important because we get exhausted. And when we were writing this project, some were saying, socialism, none, and all those things. And you get to understand, the system is so powerful, let's not undermine it. It's powerful. It's powerful. There are times when you and people start churning out exhortations. Life is too short. You know, you can't, this thing of revolution is taking away, you know. So those are so you are so correct. It's exhausting. I don't want to justify it and say it's a nice process. No, it's exhausting. Sometimes you feel low, so down, that you can even give up on your life. Okay, here is the point. The argument, again, we are making here is that there is what we call academic overproduction and intellectual underproduction. And Edward Said makes it very easy. You know, there are so many papers that are produced by universities that are stuck somewhere. What you were saying about the PhD, and I want to just add, and the academy generally, not only PhD, academy. There is a difference between knowledge production and writing for liberation. What the modern academy does, basically the bedrock of academy is one thing, is citation. So if you adhere to the procedure, you cite, you do everything. If you adhere to the procedure, you are fine, even if you are untruthful. So that is the bedrock of academy. The bedrock of academy is citation, is that you have followed all these things. Like we said, the higher degree committee doesn't want surprises. It has things it knows that in order for Petro to have qualified to become a PhD, whatever, you should have followed 1, 2, and 3, and 4, and 5. You can't come with surprises. That's how it is. We are born. That's how it is. So what we need to do is not to abandon the academy. That is why we are arguing with Petro that He must leave wherever he is and come back and fight here. Because the academy is the critical space also to introduce radical ideas. We can't hide in some mayoral office there and then you must come back here. It's a very critical, and we must get these PhDs. Because the truth of the matter is that we have a moral and intellectual authority to make certain claims. That's what happens. So they are very important. They are very important to get them. Because even if you can say, oh, okay, I'm no longer part of the academy, but you still wield that moral and intellectual authority, and that is what white people have. Uteti Lusbanban, like you were saying about that professor, who can make a summary of a 500-page in a minute and say, that is the ultimate analysis. So I'll just be fast. So that argument you are making here, you will see we have expanded on the notion of academic overproduction and intellectual underproduction of what Edward Said refers to as 8 to 5 academics. Beyond that, they suspend thinking and critical interrogation of society. So, what does it mean to end something that we are not part of? It means being revolutionary. We want to end our suffering, but we were not part of the creation of our own suffering. Ne? The suffering we experience now is not of our own making, but we have a moral and a political responsibility to end it. That's what it means. So the whole idea of township economy, the poverty line, the cost of living, and tomorrow when we deal with the idea of a combative scholarship, you will see how reason has been used or how a certain people are refused by reason. So we are going to make even biblical examples and the foundations of the modern ethics and morality. So we're going to be touching on legality, philosophy, and other things, how the modern way of thinking and doing has come about. Lastly, the story I started with, there are many stories that, like I say, in my writing, those who have meditations from the gutter, I normally story tell this existential melancholy, convey a message through storytelling. So what I've done, it's not in this text, the story, it's in meditations from the gutter. But in this text, I expand on some of the themes that are in meditations from the gutter through offering examples. Like each volume has more than 500 references. You get a point? So that they don't, even people who challenge what we write, they don't say we thumbsuck. We give them evidence to say some of these things we took them from this source, from that source, and then we have backed up our claims. So we made sure that every claim, cultural and otherwise, we make, it's backed up. Because it's always the case, especially when you challenge the status quo, for people to say, you thumbsuck, you are not objective, you are not universal, all those things, the shitty stuff, which have become the normal standards of the modern academy. You get a point? So we have such stories inside, but explaining a whole lot of things that had to be part of the text to underscore our message. And then as a vote of thanks, I just want to underscore the essence of writing is not the ultimate thing in the world. So people normally say, you behave like you have not written these 2 volumes. You are not happy, like what? I always say, I'm not an IT specialist. I'm not a formatter. Ne? So writing is not a be and end all. For this project to be a success, I had to rely on the expertise of other people. So I can't valorize writing as if writing is the ultimate way of doing things. So there is a formatter, there is a printer, there is an editor, and it goes back to that compartmentalization of knowledge that when you are studying law, law is the supreme profession. It can't. It's not a supreme profession. Because when you come, because by virtue that you were able to access Nelson Mandela University, you traveled on the road that was made by engineers and quantity surveyors. So what I'm trying to underscore is that sonke siyadingana. When you are doing well in your profession, don't undermine other people's professions. Because the subject matter is human beings. Ne? So I can't say, hey, I'm a writer, then I have to undermine everyone who doesn't write. What if I'm undermined because I can't even upload the software? You get the point? So we need to value those who are able to write, they must write. Those who are skilled on IT, they must. And this is the call we are doing here to say young people are skilled in different things. So you can't judge one person that they don't write when you write, or that they don't know computer, you know computer. We all need each other here. Otherwise, you can write on paper, and if someone who knows computer doesn't want to help you to type in, then you are, so you can't do anything. So thanks for the invitation, and thanks for coming, and I really enjoyed the engagements. There is always a poverty of discussions in such sessions, in many sessions where we attend and people are insulting, and there is no critical interrogation of ideas. So to the SRC, I truly appreciate the invitation and the hospitality. Of course, the hospitality is still going to be tested because it's only a few hours. But I appreciate the moment deeply from the bottom of my heart, and thanks, my brother. I was looking at you because I thought you were going to touch on certain things, because some people were going to say, we don't want to let sleeping dogs lie. They are going to remind us of certain things. But I appreciate you coming and facilitating the session, and it's always interesting to be with you on the platform. You were there at the launch of Meditations. You couldn't come at the ICC for the 2 volumes for other reasons. Ne? But I appreciate your support and continuing the discourse. Thank you very much, comrades.